Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America online, thisweekinamerica.us. Nice to have you with us on the program. We're talking about the new book from Kelly Scandizzo. The book is called Love Through Time. Kelly is a California native, has been an avid reader and writer from an early age. She first started writing short stories, then moved on to poetry, composing her first two pieces of music at the age of 12, and as a young adult, moved on to writing romance stories. Kelly has three children. Her biggest supporters share in her enthusiasm for reading and writing. She and her husband, along with the three children, reside in Northern California with their two furry friends. And Kelly Scandizzo joins us on the program. Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate doing this.
Well, the book is really, really interesting, and we don't want to give away too much of it. We'll talk about it in general terms with the book, Love Through Time, but I guarantee you, once you start, you're going to go all the way through rapidly to find out what's happening next in the story. I was going to read it in a couple of sittings, and all of a sudden I'm at the end and I'm wanting more. The book is called Love Through Time. First of all, I love the book cover, and in the video version, we're showing it now. Who did the book cover? Did you design that? It's very colorful and grabs your attention.
Actually, it's a combination of my idea and also the publishing. I actually sent them a painting that I really, really wanted for the book cover because it was absolutely perfect. It had the tree. It was actually more lavenders and blues, so more like of a sunset, dusk kind of thing. But I guess the painting was copywritten, so they actually played with it and came up with this, and I just love it myself. It's very descriptive and warm and yeah.
It is, and if you're walking through a bookstore and you happen to see that, or if you're browsing online and you happen to see it, it catches your attention because it really is an excellent book cover. The name of the book is Love Through Time. Where did you get this idea? I'm always fascinated how writers come up with ideas and how it develops from there. Where did the idea, the concept behind this book come from?
Well, I was actually going through writer's block with another book, and I was also going through some product sample stuff for my invention that I've been trying to get out there. So while waiting for inspiration to come up with my first book, which I haven't finished, I just had this pop in my head. I was looking at some of my family history to see where everyone was from, and lo and behold, I always knew I was, Scottish at heart. Turns out I really am through my blood, and I've always wanted to go, and for right now, this is the way I'm traveling there. And also, recently my dad was very sick, and unfortunately he passed recently, but just going through all of the tragedy that I felt, I just needed to, I guess, get it out and put it on paper, and just using two different characters and soon to be more.
And the result is Love Through Time. Kelly Scandizzo, our guest on the program. The book is available at bookventure.com in the bookstore, at Amazon, of course, at Barnes & Noble online, and through their bookstore. So you're a composer, an author, and an inventor as well. You've got an invention you're waiting on getting the go-ahead?
Yeah, I know, don't laugh, but it's a potty training mat. I came up with the idea when I was in the process of potty training my son in, well, target practice. And so I don't know if you're familiar with the toilet mats that are, kind of like a rug kind of
Oh, yes,
material,
yes.
kind of wrap. Well, this actually reaches further back to the toilet area for target practice and extends outwards because girls and boys have accidents if they don't quite make it onto the toilet. And so it's disposable, and then the parents actually just disrobe the child, wrap it up, and toss it away. And there's no being on your hands and knees, scrubbing up, bodily fluids. And it's also good for caregivers, daycares. And so right now I'm just trying to find someone to pick it up. I've already got the product sample done. I've been making them at home myself. But it's been difficult trying to find a company who wants it.
Yeah, and somebody you can trust to walk you through that process. So good luck with that. I have the impression after talking with you and after reading the book, your mind is always working. Let's go back and talk about Love Through Time without giving a whole lot away. Main character in there, the story told through her eyes, it's Jessica Lauren, and she goes through an unbearable tragedy. Talk a little bit about the setup and then how it ends up going to Scotland without giving too much away, but let it. Jessica has gone through a lot, and explain that.
Well, again, it's actually based on my own tragedies. I've lost two people in my life, so I put that in the book. And yes, one was very, very, very young. And then just because it was just so difficult to have to learn how to get over that, and then just constantly being surrounded by memories that she just needed to get away. And it turns out her grandmother, she's the Duchess, and she actually lives in Scotland. So she figured, why not go and visit her? She hasn't been to Scotland since she was very young herself. And in doing so, she went with the intention of just getting away from everything and just try to focus on healing. And in the process, she found some information about her grandfather's disappearance, and she took on the role of investigator. And I guess it's more of to put off her own mourning,
Yes.
to keep busy, to get over it, and then she goes on an adventure.
Well, she has this unbearable loss that we talk about, and she swore that she was never going to find love again. That theory is challenged later in the book, Love Through Time. And she decides, as you say, along with a friend who's going to go with her best friend, they go to Scotland to visit her grandmother, which she hasn't done in a number of years. And I'm thinking, there's just this older lady living in Scotland, little cottage somewhere. And suddenly, as the story evolves, this lady's a pretty powerful person there, isn't it? It's like sort of a mansion she's living in.
Yes, it's. I know the way it started out when she told her friend Kate. It sounded like a little cottage on the hill.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, it turns into. It was previously a castle, and it was destroyed, and so she had it rebuilt. And so yeah, it's a manor slash old part of it's still there, the castle.
Yeah, as Jessica and her friend Kate are going into town, there's a Land Rover that comes around to pick them up to take them into town. So, this is a little different than visiting, your elderly grandmother who's living all alone, all by herself in a little cottage somewhere in Scotland. It's very descriptive, and you mentioned that you have heritage, Scottish heritage. What kind of research did you do in establishing the land, the scenery over there? Because as I'm reading it, I feel like I'm there.
Well, I did some investigating. I went online, started looking at a lot of properties out there, looking at photographs of the hills, the mountains, things like that, and it's just someplace. It's also popped in my mind. I don't know why, but I just have had this picture of what Scotland would look like to me. And I'm hoping when I eventually go there, it won't let me down.
Well, and there's some family dynamics at play here too. Jessica's father hasn't visited his mother, the grandmother she visits, the Duchess, in a long time, and there's like a great storyline with that as well. But as Jessica's there, she's looking into her grandfather and then suddenly discovers what maybe the grandfather isn't dead. Something strange happened to him. So you've got that mystery that's evolving as well.
Yes, and she finally gets it out of Jasper, who is the acting butler for the Duchess. But as it turns out, he knows what happened to her grandfather, and so does her grandmother. Just everyone assumed that, he perished in a fire, but those two actually know what happened, and they go from there.
Well, yeah, and Jessica figures the grandmother's in like with the early 90s. It's like, boy, wouldn't it be nice if I could get them back together to spend what little time they have left together? And she calls on her grandfather's best friend and Sir Liam McGuinnis. Talk about Liam because he really becomes the main character towards the end of the book, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. And with Liam, it turns out that he was familiar with her grandfather. And again, she doesn't pose her grandfather as her grandfather, um, just that she needs to find this man. And she doesn't want to give too much away because she's worried about being caught because she is posing as a different person while she's there. And Liam, at an earlier time, which comes in the second book, uh, he's finding himself falling in love with Jesse. And it's very strange for him because Jesse's a boy. So he wants to help find John, which is the grandfather. And knowing what Jesse has experienced while being in Scotland in this old time, he just has come on to be her protector for some reason. And so he travels with them. And, in the second book, things get a lot more, I don't know, detailed with their relationship. And there's, again, more loss, but then love and, yeah.
You can see a whole lot of plots and subplots going on in the book Love Through Time. Kelly S. Scandizzo, our guest on the program. That's Scandizzo. The book's available at Amazon, at bookventure.com in the bookstore, Barnes & Noble online and in-store as well. And you can link on to get information on the book by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. This is an interesting journey that Jesse goes on. And without giving, again, a whole lot away, this really is an entry goes on. It's not just in the present time. It really is interesting where you take her to try to get information.
Yes, and in the second book, I hate to say it, but it's better than the first one. And of course, I'm biased because I'm the writer, but she she finds herself there and what strengths and weaknesses she has. And but in the second book, it's really, really good.
When did the interest in romance novels begin? I mentioned that started as a young adult, so that's sort of the time period. But why, and what are some of the elements that you found as a reader and now as a writer of romance novels that are key to making this enjoyable experience for the reader?
Well, my favorite authors are, well, my first one is Nora Roberts, and I've always loved her writing. It's not been too fluffy, as people like to say they're fluff novels. Um, so she's been more of an inspiration to me, and I started reading her books back in 1998. And since then, my first few books when I was much younger were very mushy. And since then, just developing in maturity and just life experiences, it's just made my writing more mature and expansive.
Well, and this is not, like you say, a fluff novel. There is substance there as well. We've got the romance that's lurking in the storyline. We've got a number of storylines that are developing as well, to the point that as I'm reading it, it's like, how do you keep track of everything that's going on here? Do you plot ahead of time? Do you sometimes stop and go, wait a minute, Jasper couldn't do that because I took him in a different direction 3 chapters ago. How do you develop the storylines for everybody, all the main characters in the story?
Well, surprisingly, and a lot of people think I'm nuts, but I handwrite my books first. And so I'm able to take notes here and there. Like I actually have a whole page of who's who and what their titles are, what years they're from, just for my own sanity. And just it's easier for me to write it out because then when I actually type it, I do change a lot of stuff, which makes the book even better. So it's just a matter of being able to go back to my binder paper notes and handwriting because I love cursive, which is a lost art.
It is.
And it is. And so I just handwrite everything and then I can actually flip back and forth. instead of looking on the computer and saying, "Ugh, what page was this on?" Because the pages differ. Um, but yeah, just being able to do that has been able, to keep me up to date with who's doing what and where.
A few minutes left in the program. I'm fascinated by the early interest you had in reading and writing. Who were some of the people who influenced that? Parents, teachers? Who sparked that interest in reading and writing?
Well, actually, my parents were, avid readers. My dad was into westerns. My mom was more into different languages, mainly French. I don't know why. But I actually grew up with a reading disability, and they inserted me into a reading company that would actually teach you how to read correctly and listen for different uh, ways of reading. So question marks, exclamation marks, things like that. And so I actually have to thank them for getting me out there and being able to read different topics. And so since I was able to overcome my reading disabilities, I've just flourished and I just love to read. I love to escape real life. So.
As I'm reading Love Through Time, yeah, I'm thinking this is almost like a continuation. Is it difficult for you to stop? I would think once you get rolling and the story is developing, it'd be pretty hard to say, okay, I'm going to try to remember where I am and I'll do this tomorrow at 2 o'clock. How difficult is it to stop once you really get on a roll, when you get in the zone?
It's actually really not hard, and plus, I have kids, so
So yeah, yeah.
I take care of them first. But they've been really, really awesome. They keep asking me, "How far have you gotten? What chapter are you on now, Mom?" I'm like, "Well, I'm stuck on this one." And it's really not that hard once I have some quiet time, because I'm also a nanny. While the babies are sleeping, I sit down and just write, and they usually sleep for about 3 hours. And so I can do writing, and then at nighttime when I'm laying in bed or sitting, really, I just write. And then eventually, when my brain's tired, I just put it aside, and then I think about more situations for the next time I have to write in there.
You dedicate the book to your children, to my little dreamers who are my biggest fans. This has to be, I mean, what a role model. You're giving them the gift of literacy and giving the gift of success. If you really want to achieve something, you can do that. You're a published author now. You've got the invention that's working on. How much fun is this to make this a family experience that you're going through?
Oh, it's been a lot of fun because my girls, they love to read. That's pretty much all they do is read. My oldest is into graphic novels right now, which drives me nuts. Um, but it's inspired her, and she doesn't really like to write because of her disability. She just has a hard time focusing. She's ADD. But just sitting down with me, she actually writes her own stories. And then she's like, "Mom, can you be my editor?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so it's encouraged them to write their own stories and use their imaginations, which I really love, because every kid should have their imagination out there and something to read later on when they're older.
About 30 seconds left here in the program. The time has gone by way too quickly. So, if you're a writer and you get a writer's block, you go invent a couple of things, you write another book, and you eventually, are you going to get over the block on that one book, or is that sort of like chapter closed?
I think I'm gonna rewrite it. The prologue is awesome. I've had some people read it and they're like, "You need to just delve into this book.
Yes.
You get it done." And I got, I think, about 15 chapters written, but then it just kind of fizzled out. So I think I need to revisit it once book 3 of this adventure is done, which I currently am working on, and then just come back to the first book and rewrite it and go from there.
Well, good luck with all of the projects. The specific project we're talking about is Kelly's book, Love Through Time. Kelly S. Scandizzo, our guest in the program. That's Scandizzo. Book is available at Barnes & Noble. It's available Amazon, bookventure.com, in the bookstore. You can link on and get all the information by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Kelly, a pleasure having you on the program. Loved having a chance to read Love Through Time. Best of luck with that, and hopefully we'll have you back on the program.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're listening to This Week in America online, thisweekinamerica.us. Information there on our guest Kelly Scandizzo and her book, Love Through Time. And we're back right after these messages.